Yeah. All right. All right. For those of you just joining us on the recording, we are going to start with the objectives for today. So kind of what we're going to be going through today is understanding the role of a continuum of care, familiarizing stakeholders and providers with the recent and upcoming changes, really that we're working on to better meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness, as well as our partners and providers. And then, like I said earlier, we're going to be really gathering some feedback and some input on the proposed committee structure for the continuum. Okay, so taking kind of, like I said, a 30,000 foot view, we've had a lot of change in our work, particularly since before COVID, and a lot of new people joining our continuum and the work that we're doing. So we wanted to take just a couple of minutes and talk about what is a continuum of care. So really, a continuum of care is really, it's a system designed to promote community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness. So it's really the system that we're creating collectively to address homelessness. And this is, I thought this was interesting. It's just a map of all the continuums of care in the United States. If you look at, here's our state for anyone like me that's geographically challenged, I put an arrow there for you. Here is Colorado. We have 4 continuums of care. We're going to talk about those in a second. If you look at, can you all see my arrow if I'm doing this, or is that just like, okay, good. Or I didn't know if I was doing that for giggles for me, or if you all could see it too. So if you look at like California, yeah, they have a lot of them. There's a lot of continuums of care in California. But then like the state of Wyoming, they have 1 continuum of care. In Colorado, we're kind of in the middle. There are 4 continuums of care. So there is the Colorado Springs continuum of care. There's Northern Colorado. This is our continuum of care. It's a 7-county Metro Denver region. And then the rest of the entire state is the balance of state continuum of care. So there are 4 kind of organizations that work to have this role of a continuum of care and in the state of Colorado. And then another just random fact, I thought you all want to know, we are in Region 8 for HUD. So that is our region, in case you ever hear that. There are several regions that are HUD, and we're in Region 8. We're kind of right at where 6, 7, and 8 all come together. So one of the unique things, and I think it's important for us to take this into consideration as we're looking at the data that we're talking about today, is that Colorado in 2018 adopted a Uniform Homeless Management Information System. I will refer to that as HMIS. I'm pretty sure everyone on this call knows what that is and probably uses it. And we're one of the few states with various COCs, like Wyoming is 1 COC, so they have 1 HMIS system. But other states, they might have multiple systems where if someone's experiencing homelessness and they cross over boundaries of a continuum of care, they have to kind of restart the whole process and go through a different system. With the state of Colorado, we have 1 Uniform Homeless Management Information System, which allows us to do a couple of things. First of all, we can look at local, regional, and statewide data, which is really exciting. Matt Richard, who's joined us today, is going to be showing us some really amazing, cool things that we've been able to do with all of the data that you all are putting in every day and working so hard to make sure we get. It's super cool, super snazzy. And Matt's going to show us that a little bit later. And then the other thing that we have in Colorado is the statewide HMIS collaborative, which really is a representative body from the 4 continuums of care that create our statewide policies and procedures for HMIS. So just want to kind of provide that context as we're looking at things today. So kind of a high-level overview of a continuum's responsibilities. So really we operate this body, this continuum of care, including membership and really kind of the homelessness response. We designate and operate the Homeless Management Information System. We plan for the COC and really like what programs do we have? How quickly are we housing people? What are someone's journey through our HMIS system? Figuring out improvements, things like that. As well as a lot of you have probably heard of the COC competition NOFA, which is our annual funding process every year that we submit an application on behalf of the continuum to HUD. And then locally, there is a committee that kind of ranks all the projects and then submits the collective application to HUD as well. So those are kind of some of the main buckets of a continuum of care. Within a continuum of care, there are members. And so really what the members are tasked with doing is really engaging with opportunities to improve the system. And really how we do that in our continuum is through our committee structure, which we're going to be looking at later, looking at the COC charter every 5 years. So in August of this year, we'll be looking at our charter again and bringing it to membership for vote. Align with the member responsibilities in the charter, and then attend meetings like this, as well as go to our committee meetings and vote on other things related to the COC. So that's kind of an overview of the responsibilities. So one of the things I know, I've been the executive director about a year now. I made it 13 months. And so what I really made sure that I did when I stepped into this role was spent some time meeting with pretty much anyone that would meet with me and hearing a lot of different feedback from people. And then also our board, our staff, and others have worked through hearing a lot of feedback. And today what we want to do is kind of walk you through the 4 pillars of our work and how we've been incorporating that feedback and working to make improvements, as well as sharing some future states with some improvements to these systems. So kind of the 4 core areas of our continuum of care work are collaboration, our coordinated entry system, data and information, which is our HMIS data, and then what do we do with that? And then resources, so whether that's monetary or staffing. And our Continuum of Care board have laid out 4 kind of overarching aims in those buckets. And they include aim number 1, which is around collaboration, which is there's regional collaboration to end homelessness. Aim 2, which is people experiencing homelessness or housing instability are connected with housing in a timely manner. That's coordinated entry and how we're doing that. Aim 3 is really around information and data. So the region is informed to make effective, equitable decisions to address homelessness. And then our last aim is around the resourcing in our region. So providers, partners, and communities have and utilize resources to meet the region's needs in addressing homelessness. So those are kind of the 4 core pillars of our work that we're going to be talking about today. Again, in each of those buckets, there's a lot happening. It would take way longer than the next 30 minutes to go through all of that with you. So we're doing some high-level things that we think are really important for you to understand. And also, any of us are always willing to answer questions and meet with anyone. So aim number 1 is really around that regional collaboration piece. So we want to highlight a couple of things, but before I do that, okay, we're going to do our first poll. So I'm going to launch this. I am curious if you all could answer, what's your familiarity with Built for Zero? And I'm just curious if you are a BFZ pro, like you know it so well, you even know that we just call it BFZ. You've heard of it and you're kind of familiar. You might know what's going on a little bit. And then you're like, built for what? I don't know what you're talking about. Built for Zero, that's totally new to me. So I'm kind of curious. All right, we're at 65%, 68, 70, 75. We're getting there. Okay. So it looks like we have some pros in the room, some people that are somewhat familiar. Okay, we're at 80%. I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds. 109. Okay, cool. So what it looks like, can you all see that now? All right, we're doing well today. All right, so it looks like about a third of you are, Built for Zero. You probably could do a presentation on it. Some of you have heard of it, and then Built for Zero is new to some of you. After today, what I'm going to do is send out the recording. Thank you, Sarah, for actually starting the recording. We'll put it on our YouTube page, along with a link to some Built for Zero resources, and then a poll as well, and things like that, some surveys. But I kind of wanted to just get an understanding of where we are as a group on that. I'm not going to go into another Built for Zero presentation because that's a whole day in and of itself. But I do just want to talk a little bit about it because it's really what we've started to use as a framework for regional coordination and collaboration. So Built for Zero is a framework to drive measurable reduction. So it's getting the quality data, understanding who's experiencing homelessness, and then driving reductions and making sure that resources are matched appropriately and assured that they're the most effective. And so what we've been doing for about the last 2 years is we recognize we have a really big region, y'all. It's the size of Connecticut. It's very diverse. It's very different. And there is no one size fits all. So what we've been able to do is really create these 9 subregions in our community. So it's the 7 counties, the city of Aurora, and then Tri-Cities, which is Littleton, Inglewood, and Sheridan. And within them, what they've been doing is really kind of implementing this Built for Zero framework. So we have some shared definitions and a shared framework, but that really allows for some local kind of influence on how it's implemented. And within that, there are some local homeless response teams. And what we're doing is we're starting with veterans. And there's a lot of really good reasons why we started with veterans, but we're getting to a point where we know veterans by name, so that we can work towards measurable reductions. And within that, we've created veteran case conferencing within the subregions to be able to really address the needs of veterans specifically. And the good news is it's working. There's some exciting things that have been happening in our region. First of all, veteran homelessness is down 31% in 2 years. The national average is actually 11%. So we're almost 3 times the national average, which was amazing. And then you can see the Boulder team there holding the trophy that we've made for people that reach quality data. Quality data is one of the big milestones for Built for Zero. That means you know all of the veterans and all singles eventually who are experiencing homelessness in your region or in your subregion. And there's a scorecard, there's a whole thing. I can send out a link to that. It's pretty cool. It shows you where all your communities are. But Boulder was the first in our region to do that. Their names are now on the trophy. It's kind of like the Stanley Cup I hear. I don't watch hockey, but that's what it's been modeled after. So this was at our learning session in August. I think the other thing I just wanted to share that was really exciting is on during the point in time, Secretary McDonough of the VA came to Denver to help with the point in time and also to recognize our work in driving veteran reductions. It also was featured in part in a Wall Street Journal article, which was really cool. And he actually gave us a coin, which is a really big honor. There was a secret handshake involved that I had to get right. So I didn't drop the coin when he secretly passed it to me. Good news, I didn't drop it, nor did anyone else that was honored that evening. But it was a really big honor and we're getting it framed. It'll be in our office. But just want to share with you all that I think sometimes it's hard to feel success in this work. There's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of hard things that happen every day. But I think it's also important to share our collective successes that we're having. And this is definitely one of them, is really seeing veteran reductions and seeing us become kind of a national model for other large metro regions. So it's very exciting. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sierra Trujillo, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I just want to say that it's been a really exciting opportunity, and I'm just really grateful to have joined MDHI's team as their Director of DEI. And I've learned a lot over the past couple of years. My focus has been being in community, building relationships with the community, getting to know folks. And some of the things that I've learned is that our homeless services communities at different points of knowing and learning and implementing more equitable and inclusive practices. And, it's something that we're trying to center in the work that we do. And in thinking about that, some of the things that I put to consider as a community is that we need systemic improvements that will require all of our partners at all levels to understand and address disparities using a racial equity lens. And what that could look like is one thing that I tend to share with folks when I am in community is really looking within your organizations and agencies first and trying to identify those inequities to build up, to be better, to model, so that way it's easier for us to do the work externally and together. Another thing that we've been working on is increasing engagement with BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color community organizations. I think the importance there is making sure that individuals that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color have communities that they can go to where they feel safe and they have some security, and that there's culturally relevant and identity-based services. So I've been really trying to make those connections and identify those amazing organizations in our region. And then last, but certainly not least, is partnering with lived experts of homelessness and housing instability. That along with building those partnerships of community organizations, it's really bringing that focus back to the people who are most impacting and putting them at the center of the solution and decision making. So we've been making some really great strides to do that. Next slide, please, Julie. Some of the accomplishments this past year to advance equity and inclusion at MDHI that I'd love to share with you all is we've strengthened our Young Adult Leadership Committee. That's what was formerly known as our COC's Youth Action Board. That group has been very busy this year, and it's been really exciting to watch their transformation and some of the things that they've done in the community, including conversations with U.S. representatives during Hill Day. They met with the executive director at the U.S. Interagency Council to End Homelessness, USICH, this past year. And they've also collaborated and worked on grant proposals like the YHDP, as well as actively participated in our recent state of homelessness report. And then last month, they participated and helped with supporting Aurora's point in time efforts. So it's been really exciting. I believe all of them are here today. Really grateful for that group. Another thing that we continue to do is build relationships with our BIPOC-led service organizations and increasing that participation and their membership in the continuum of care. I know we have representatives from both Second Chance Center, the Native American Housing Circle, and Denver Indian Family Resources Center here today. Those relationships too have been just amazing. The Native American Housing Circle, for those that don't know, is a coalition of Native-led service organizations, and building those relationships have been just an opportunity to really look at community that is most disproportionately impacted, and finding solutions and way to help with those resources for them. And then I'll talk more about the Results Academy, but the Results Academy is a working group that was formed to help evaluate our coordinated entry system for racial inequities. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about coordinated entry. And then another exciting thing that's happening is that we'll be launching a pilot project this year to collect real-time qualitative data from some participating partner organizations with Pulse for Good kiosks, and we'll have more information to share with the community as that starts to roll out. And then on the horizon, with the successful, I guess, format and setup of how we reset the Young Adult Leadership Committee, I'm really excited to do that with our Adult Committee and the Lived Experience Advisory Committee. So we'll be in the planning and formation of that group here in the coming months. And then our continued work with the Results Academy and coordinated entry. And then implementing more ongoing lived expertise listening sessions throughout the COC to also expand that qualitative data collection. That's all I have. I am going to, I think, pass it off to Kyla, or no, Marla, I'm sorry, to talk about One Home and coordinated entry. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. I am Marla Sutherland. I'm the Coordinating Entry System Manager with MDHI. So MDHI's second aim is people experiencing homelessness or housing instability are connected with housing in a timely manner. One Home is our regional coordinating entry system. We welcome feedback and invite collaboration in how One Home is informed and improved. Our direct service providers and housing providers are the subject matter experts in providing feedback on the well-being of our community's coordinated entry system. Thank you to everyone who partners with One Home and has provided feedback to collectively improve our system. We will be highlighting some of the main updates from recent years. Although these slides are not exhaustive of the updates and improvements One Home has made, they are some of the most impactful updates to share with our stakeholders today. If you've not already signed up for our monthly One Home newsletter, I invite you to sign up on our onehomeco.org website under the Updates tab. The link is also provided on the slide. So looking back on coordinated entry updates, in 2020, FEMA mandated every coordinated entry system change its prioritization factors in response to COVID-19. In 2021, our community asked, how is coordinated entry supporting people in rapid rehousing who need longer-term support? With the Emergency Housing Voucher Program available through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, 7 local public housing authorities partnered with our Continuum of Care to determine local preferences for these vouchers. One of those local preferences selected was for any households enrolled in rapid rehousing programs needing longer-term support. We prioritize this flexible resource to meet the needs shared by our community for rapid rehousing program participants. Housing providers have called out the difficulties to find people once matched through One Home. In 2022, One Home took a 2-month hiatus of the monthly inactive process to refine our inactive report to include all COC-related activity to be a more effective tool to use to identify households enrolled in One Home with no activity in the last 120 days. Under our inactive policy, any household with no activity in the last 120 days will be removed from our community queue and exited from One Home to ensure that any match made is with households who are active in the community and eligible for the available resource. The newly improved inactive report and process was implemented in November 2022. In addition to improving our inactive procedures, we have also operationalized other regular quality assurance procedures. For example, weekly processing of denials and a weekly monitoring of pending and in process referrals. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so really focusing on looking under the hood of One Home and the operations of it to make sure that we are managing appropriately. In March 2022, we were asked, is One Home flexible to meet the needs of our regional homeless response system's time-limited funding? The specific ask was related to ESG CV funding that was originally scheduled to sunset in August 2022. At the time of this pilot, HUD had not yet announced the extension of this funding. One Home responded to the community by implementing a PDSA, or Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle of a rapid exit from emergency shelter pilot from April to August 2022. One Home paired emergency shelter providers to make direct referrals to rapid rehousing partners funded by ESGCB. We are currently in the study part of this PDSA cycle to better understand how this pilot's analysis can inform improvements to our coordinated entry system through data-driven decisions. In December 2022, we held 2 listening sessions in our community. We received amazing and meaningful feedback through this process. To highlight just a few today, the need for diversifying types of complex housing resources, for example, assisted living, nursing homes. The length of time in the system is too long. A need for cross-sector collaboration with STAR, police, healthcare providers for outreach assistance. Coordinated entry system is confusing and not easily understood by providers and participants, need more onboarding support. The VI SPDAT is still a big pain point, and currently our application process and access to that application is complicated and not user-friendly for most people. Looking ahead to 2023, we are creating a One Home onboarding packet to better support new agencies partnering with One Home. We agree more support and clearer messaging is needed to inform how our coordinated entry system functions. That clearer messaging of access is something we focused on in 2022 by first centering participants with the update of our Need Help webpage to include a geomap and a list of all coordinated entry access points by subpopulation. This list includes the types of services offered at each of our partnering agencies, their contact information, and clear directions on how to access coordinated entry at their locations, including drop-in hours and days. The One Home onboarding packet for providers will be posted and distributed to our partners after its final stage of revision this year. We know the VI SPDAT is not a trauma-informed tool and does not meet validity, reliability, or equity standards. We have listened to our community on the need for a new coordinated entry standard assessment tool, which is a commonality many coordinated entry systems in our country are facing with the VI-SPDAT. ORCODE recently released intellectual rights to the VI-SPDAT, and we are now allowed to make changes to the core questions. One Home is reviewing all coordinated entry documents from program enrollment to the VI-SPDAT to current living situation to identify which questions are used for prioritization determinations, coordinated entry eligibility, tenant selection plan considerations for One Home connected resources, and so on. We are looking at the why behind each and every question asked from start to finish one by one. This system improvement is currently underway and is being reviewed by MDHI staff and the Results Academy team, which Sierra will share more information on shortly. We will bring our findings to the community and coordinated design team, or CDT, for discussion and decisions on next steps towards implementation. And we appreciate everyone who partners and supports One Home and is a critical piece to informing how we continue to improve our coordinated entry system. Next, Sierra will be sharing more information about the Results Academy team.
Thanks, Marla. Hello again. So in 2021, MDHI partnered with C4 Innovations, who's a consulting agency that's dedicated to building more racially equitable systems through process improvement, and to analyze racial inequities in our coordinated entry system. As part of that continued work, the Results Academy Working Group, which is a group of individuals with lived experience and expertise, frontline staff, and community partner leadership, to advise and partner in the upcoming coordinated entry system redesign, to ensure that those racially equitable goals and outcomes happen. So currently, the Results Academy team is also a part of the review of the coordinated entry documents, and are informing those revisions, including the condensing of the VI-SPDAT. Our Young Adult Leadership Committee is also a part of the Results Academy, and they advise on many of the youth changes and reviewing, and so they will be reviewing the TAE assessment here in a couple weeks. Also coming up is reviewing the community partner listening sessions to inform our action planning. And those were the sessions that Marla just talked about that happened in December, where we learned a lot. So we'll be reviewing those in the Results Academy to help inform our action plan. And then we'll be creating an action plan in partnership with the coordinated entry team at MDHI for the redesign of the coordinated entry. So it's been a pleasure working with this group. Many of them are also here today, and it's nice to have that well-rounded community and regional input. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Kyla Moe. I'm the Director of Information and Impact, and I am going to speak with you guys today about AIM 3, which is the region is informed to make effective, equitable decisions to address homelessness. So how do we do that? Well, one of the first steps to do this is to increase our HMIS participation rate. We thank everybody that is currently using HMIS and that has joined us. MDHI took over the HMIS implementation, in 2018. And since then, we have seen a tremendous amount of growth. So thank you for all of those that have joined. And for those of you that are experiencing some barriers or have some questions or concerns or interest in using HMIS, I would love to talk to you, and we would love to talk through any challenges or any barriers of your programs getting entered into HMIS. So please feel free to reach out to myself or our HMIS help desk, and we would love to schedule a meeting to talk through about getting you on board with HMIS. As you can see, like I said, we have tremendously grown from 2018 to now. Our agencies have nearly doubled. Our programs that use HMIS have increased over 200%, and the amount of cumulative end users that we have trained over the last 5 years has gone from 290 in 2018 to over 1,900 users that we have cumulatively trained to use the system. Training is a crucial part of getting to know the system, as Matt will speak here in a minute. In order to tell our story and to really be informed about the work that all of you guys are doing in the community, we need good quality data into the system. So the first step of getting into the system is getting trained on what are the data standards, what are the best practices, how to answer the questions, how to use the system. So with the tremendous growth over the last 5 years, we have had to change some of our processes and some of the stuff that we have done here. And we've heard, we appreciate everybody that has provided feedback about some of our processes, especially around the training process. So as I mentioned, the training is a crucial first step to make sure that you understand the data that you're getting in there so that we can accurately report what our community is doing. So we have made some changes over the last 5 years, and to be honest, there'll be more changes to come. This will be an ever evolving process as we grow and as we learn more. So, starting out in 2018, we did in-person trainings in our little office in Mile High United Way. As we continued to grow and then the pandemic hit, we had to do a shift, and we did a shift to doing all virtual trainings, to where you joined a Zoom and you went through the course material. Based on some feedback and that we've heard from you all, we kind of, in 2022, we revamped the curriculum of that virtual training, and we did it to be more self-led, self-paced, meaning you didn't have to attend the 4-hour sessions that were held 4 times a month. It's you log into a new learning management platform, and there are modules that you have to go through at your own pace. And then we did kind of pivoted to a once-a-week office hour. So if you were struggling and you needed help through your self-paced, you can attend one of these once-a-week office hours, and we'd be able to walk you through it. Again, that was kind of a pilot, like we're learning as we go. So we've heard from you guys, and we've started to make some changes to the format already this year, and we will be continuing to make some formats to our trainings throughout the year. But some of the changes that we will be making is we have kind of pivoted from that once a week group office hours to more one-on-one support. So if you or any of your end users are struggling to get through training, please reach out to the help desk. And thank you for whoever posted the help desk email in the chat. Reach out to the help desk, and we would be happy to schedule a one-on-one time to walk you through this material. Again, this material is not easy, and we recognize that. Again, it's important that we collect it, and we collect it accurately. So we're happy to provide that one-on-one support for you if anybody is struggling at any portion of the training. Some of the other stuff that we'll be looking at for the training is we're going to kind of revisit the assessments and the activities in that self-led, and really assure that they're accessible and straightforward. We don't want to put forth any additional barriers to having to learn this already complex material. And then we've also kind of shifted to part of the training. It's a 3-day course that it's 3 courses that span over 3 days. It's not 3 full days. It's 2 to 3 hours spanned over 3 days. The very last is a practicum where you actually get into our training sandbox and do a client enrollment from start to finish. So again, trying to apply the practices of what you've learned into the system. And then we kind of grade and look at that practicum, and based on that, we give you credentials. If not, we've been providing you kind of more feedback of please look at the prior living situation section and revise, and giving you kind of the opportunity to revise it. It's not just a one you fail thing like we first launched. So again, we're kind of changing some stuff. We'll evaluate over the next couple months on these changes that we've made, And then again, just a constant process of revamping it to again, we don't want to create any unnecessary barriers to learning this material. At the same time, it is important that this material is learned and understood for the crucial nature. And so again, yeah, we appreciate your support. There is a training feedback survey in the course that we would love for you all to provide feedback, or write into me directly. I would love to hear your feedback on any trainings that you have. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Matt, that is going to talk about what we do with this data and what we could do with this data.
Thank you, Kyla, and hello, everyone. My name is Matt Richard, and I'm the Data Design and Reporting Lead here at MDHI, and I am excited to talk data with all of you. Excuse me. So before I get into the exciting progress MDHI has made over the past few years to improve our data infrastructure and reporting capabilities, I did want to briefly discuss how important quality data is to our COC. So in addition to being the COC lead, MDHI also acts as the HMIS lead for our continuum. And we're ultimately the stewards who are responsible for overseeing the data being entered into HMIS. And as Kyla was just discussing, that ensures that new users are provided with adequate training that they need in order to understand the HMIS data standards and how to enter accurate and timely data into the system. It also entails monitoring data quality of the data being entered into the system, flagging inconsistencies or errors. My colleague John has begun developing automated data quality reports that go out to providers on a daily basis. And also it involves continually reviewing and updating our HMIS policies and procedures around the use of HMIS and associated data collection. This work is iterative. We're always evaluating how to improve care coordination and the quality of our HMIS data. So ultimately, this is my long-winded attempt at stating MDHI is here to help providers, stakeholders, and our community at large better understand the scale and characteristics of the work being done in homeless services in our region and the disproportionate way homelessness impacts Black, Indigenous people of color. And candidly, my friends, those efforts are not possible without quality, timely data being entered into HMIS. So stated another way, taking care of the system is taking care of the person. If we can hop on to the next slide. So with that being said, MDHI uses Tableau and Tableau Server, which are business intelligence tools provided to us via our partnership with Community Solutions and their Built for Zero initiative, where we host data sources from HMIS and associated dashboards that we've developed. So thank you to Community Solutions for providing us with this tool and for their partnership. If you've seen the point in time dashboards we've published on our website the past few years, which is on the screen right now, this is an example of something we've been able to develop with Tableau to give community members and members of the public interactive tools to deepen local insight into the extent of homelessness in the 7-county Metro Denver region. And while we're proud of the way we've made those interactive point-in-time dashboards available, the data set for the PIT represents a one-night sample size. And Tableau Server gives us the opportunity to host and refresh data sources from HMIS on a regular basis. So those data sources are connected to the dashboards we've created. When we refresh the data source, we refresh every dashboard with new data from HMIS, providing updated breakdowns to our providers who access the tool via a username and password provided to them for this secure online Tableau Server platform. And if we can go to the next slide. This is a screenshot from one of our statewide dashboards that we host on Tableau Server, containing the breakdowns for the total number of people and households who were placed into permanent housing by permanent housing projects in HMIS over the previous calendar year of 2022. So I selected this time frame just to kind of celebrate with all of you here today that in the continuum, over 2,700 people and 1,700 households secured permanent housing this last year, but users who load the dashboard up can change the reporting period. They can look at breakdowns for their specific agency, for a specific project type. They can click in and interact with different demographics and ensure that people being housed are being housed in equitable ways. So we can go to the next slide as well. This is going to be an example of our veteran Built for Zero dashboards that we've developed. Thanks to, thanks so much to our partners at the Department of Veterans Affairs and our veteran service providers who make this work possible. We've been able to move our veteran by name list process into HMIS, and we're now able to generate the total number of veterans experiencing homelessness in our continuum via our HMIS data sources when we refresh those. So when we refresh and we load the dashboard, we get updated breakdowns every single week in a really cohesive and streamlined way with all the interactivity I've been talking about. And then if we can go to the next slide, Tableau Server also helps us use data to push back on harmful narratives, like about how people might be moving to Colorado from other states in order to experience homelessness here. The data we have available in our system about where people report being last permanently housed prior to their experience of homelessness is fairly clear. It's not somewhere else in the country, it's right here in Colorado. So Tableau and Tableau Server allow us to stop speaking in anecdotes and start demonstrating with data. And that is incredibly powerful. So that's all I have prepared to speak about today. I just want to reiterate MDHI's commitment to using data to make informed, effective, and equitable decisions to address homelessness. And speaking of the power of making data accessible and available, I'll kick it back to Jamie to discuss the State of Homelessness report.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. One of the things, we've been doing this for 3 years now, is our annual State of Homelessness report. And if you haven't seen it, it's on our website. And I just want to give a huge shout out to our team, but specifically Layla Saeed, who's on our call today. She is the ultimate engineer and designer and the person that really produced this report. And it is absolutely chock full of information, including really having that lens around racial equity and lived expertise and lived experience. So I just encourage you all to take a look at that. It has a lot of very valuable information, particularly as you're going and answering questions from the public, or again, back to Matt's point, wanting to dispel some of the myths and some of the things that we hear in our day-to-day work. This document really provides the data to make data-informed decisions, as well as educate our public collectively. Okay. So with that, I am going to kick it over to Jackie Hernandez from our team to talk about our fourth aim.
Thanks, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Hernandez. I'm our Director of Stability and Improvement here at MDHI, and I've been here for about 5 years now and kind of had a few different roles. And so it's just a really exciting time to dig in with, our new leadership and focus on aim 4, which is providers, partners, and communities have and utilize resources to meet the region's needs in addressing homelessness. None of this work is possible unless we have the resources to do it and to do it effectively. So just to give a couple highlights, ESG CV for all of you that have been participating in that program, either through us or through Denver and Aurora. It has been quite a beast in the last couple years. And so that has been a real big focus on getting our ESG CV program wrapped up. We administer the homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing components right now for both regular ESG and ESG CV through the Division of Housing's allocation of ESG funds. We're going to make a transition from moving away from that administrative piece and doing more kind of just coordination with the state and our city partners on the ESG program in the region. So huge shout out and thank you to everybody who has taken on ESG CV dollars and ESG dollars through us in the last few years. But we've seen a lot of success and improvements to the program, and really excited to kind of transition it back over to Division of Housing for their allocation and working on kind of a different level of coordination. So again, thank you again for all the providers and your hard work, because I know it has not been easy. Another really exciting resource that we will be implementing is an option for family rehousing through the Day One Fund. So this came from the Jeff Bezos money that we kind of had, and we use also in different ways to support a community navigator for the coordinated entry system. This will be kind of more program related, and we're really excited to bring on some partners to again, help with that transition to with ESG CV going away, and how we can make sure that we don't have families falling through the cracks. And then another big one that you guys have all, submitted lots of letters of support to us. So thank you for getting those in. But we also applied for some transformational homelessness grant funding through Division of Housing. So really exciting time for us to focus on those system level improvements and provide more support to the COC partners. This is new and we have an opportunity to think outside the box, and we want to be as supportive as possible as a COC to make sure everybody feels supported and getting the information that you need to run an effective program. And then we love our flex funds. So our housing stability flex fund, it's been a little bit of a slower year, but we got some of the data there to show. Libby Elizabeth on our team does a great job getting back to people quickly. And also, we're just looking forward to the future of the flex fund. And we gotta love it when it's not, those federal dollars that come with a lot of strings. And again, another opportunity to kind of think outside the box. So that's kind of all I had for AIM 4. As you know, funding and resources and all of that changes so quickly. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. And so we want to talk just real quickly. We've talked about collaboration, we've talked about coordinated entry, we've talked about data, we've talked about resources. So if we are doing well in all of those pillars, one of the things the board has asked us to do is kind of come up with some long-term goals and then circulate it and get some feedback on it. So we're kind of starting that process and just want to kind of give you an initial look at what these goals look like. So, we can't solve an issue that we don't understand. So one of the first things is making sure that we have quality data and then driving reduction similarly to what we've done for veterans. So kind of the proposed 5-year regional goals are having quality all singles data in all 9 of the 9 subregions. Again, Boulder has reached that milestone. And we're getting close, at least around veteran data for many of the other subregions. Having quality data for families and youth. And then having reached functional zero, in other words, can we house more veterans in a month than there are experiencing homelessness that month in all subregions? And then have 4 subregions that have ended homelessness for at least one population being all singles, chronic singles, or families. So that's kind of what we're looking at for long-term goals. Jennifer's going to talk a little bit about the different groups that we're circulating this with, as well as some of the committee structures. Just wanted to kind of start to put that out there for you all as we're talking through the different workflows that we're doing today. Good news, we are right on time. It is 9:55. Here's what I propose. A 5-minute break. Can we all come back at 10? Go get coffee, walk around, get some circulation back in your legs. And we'll take a brief 5-minute pause, and then we'll come back. And Jennifer Bice is actually going to hop on and lead us through some of the changes proposed with the committees. All right, I'll. It over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. And good to be here with you all this morning. For folks who maybe I haven't met yet, I'm Jennifer Bice. I work for Denver's Department of Housing Stability currently as our acting deputy director of operations. But I'm here today to talk about councils and committees really from work that I did while I was a member of the MDHI board of directors. I was on the board from 2019 till just this past December in 2022. And I'm talking about some work we've been doing about kind of looking at our council and committee structure that's currently in our charter taking in feedback we've heard from folks and thinking about what are our opportunities to do this engagement work with our COC even better than we're doing now. And I also want to acknowledge that this work has been a team effort, and I see Carla, and I think I saw Kelly. So Carla Respects Nothing and Kelly Barker on this call too, who have been just wonderful thought partners in this work. And so if we can go to the next slide, I'll start digging in. So this slide is just a little bit of a roadmap for the second part of this meeting. So we'll start with some kind of grounding in our purpose around councils and committees, why we have them and what's our goal in looking at this. Then we'll talk a little bit about current state, what's in our charter right now and how has that worked, before moving into some proposed updates to hopefully make some improvements on that current state. And then we'll really pivot to some small group discussions in breakout groups so that we can really hear from you all and get feedback on, is this kind of moving in the right direction? And then we'll circle back and just talk briefly about next steps so that you all know what comes next after today. So at our most basic level, why do we have committees? They're really a core part of our engagement work and collaborative work as a COC. They're here to help us ensure that the work of our COC is informed by our stakeholders, including all of you. It's really that space to make your voices heard and help inform decisions that we need to make as a continuum. And I wanted to pause before digging in further to also acknowledge that I think the role of our councils and committees has shifted a bit over the years at MDHI as MDHI staff has grown. And so I think previously when our MDHI staff capacity was much smaller, committees and councils were where we did the day-to-day work of the COC. We're all rolling up our sleeves, writing documents, really digging in and doing a lot of that collaborative work in committee spaces. And as we've been able to be fortunate and grow the staff capacity at MDHI to dedicate to this work in that way, we've been kind of able to shift over time toward really using councils and committees for that engagement function and really using those spaces as input and feedback while we have the good fortune to have MDHI team members who can kind of carry work forward in between meetings and spaces. And our goal in reviewing this council and committee structure that's currently in our charter is really centered in our mission at MDHI. So leading and advancing collaboration to end homelessness in Metro Denver. Engagement is a critical component of that collaborative work, and we want to make sure that our engagement structure results in policies and decisions that are informed by people with lived experience and by those who are actively engaged in this work. And we also want to do that in a way that's really valuing everyone's time. We know we're all doing so much, and so how do we do this work in a way that really respects and centers people's time? This slide is a visual. I can't take credit for this visual. Someone else made it and it is beautiful. But this is a visual representation of what is currently in our COC charter in terms of councils and committees. We had envisioned 4 councils that had a number of committees reporting up to those councils, and then those councils reporting up to the MDHI board of directors. This was something that we put into charter back in 2018, so just about 5 years ago. And while I think as you look at this slide, at least when I look at this slide, I see so many important topics and things we need to be digging into together. And this slide also represents 16 different, I think frequently monthly meetings in addition to the MDHI board of directors. And it also had kind of that 2-tiered structure, which added some complexity to how we're engaging as a continuum. And so I think with this decision to look at the structure, it's really about how do we do better? How do we make it as easy for our stakeholders to engage in this work as possible? And it's been a few years since we kind of set that initial vision. We've also really been hearing from many of you around how this is working. Now, Jamie talked at the beginning of this meeting about the work that she's done in taking over the executive director role at MDHI to really hear from many of you about your experiences. Councils and committees came up as part of that, those conversations. We've also been really fortunate on the MDHI board side to have vice chairs of Continuum activities, which is the officer role on the board that really focuses in on COC work. We've been really fortunate to have folks in that role who have dug in really deeply. We've had people going to as many of these meetings as they can to observe and chat with people, and do want to particularly acknowledge Carla Respects Nothing for her work in this space as a previous vice chair of Continuum activities. And then we also formed a work group of our board of directors, our Continuum activities committee, to really dig in on this work over the past year or so. And that's where we also did additional interviews with MDHI staff and co-chairs, folks leading these groups, to really hear what's going well, what are some of our challenges. This slide is my attempt to summarize a lot of that feedback. It may not totally hit everything that each of you may have shared, but these are some of the themes that I think we've heard from those various processes. And so first, the structure was difficult to understand how to plug in with so many different spaces. Where do I go to be part of the conversation I'm interested in? Where do I go first to help learn about the COC? It got a little tricky there to really understand and be accessible in terms of knowing how to engage as folks were getting into COC work. Second, we learned that some groups never fully formed or never formed at all due to capacity, or because we identified that we didn't necessarily need a standing committee or a council to drive that work forward. The scale of that, the number of groups we were trying to manage, also made it difficult to do that intentionally. Some feedback around, are we meeting just to meet? Where are we going with this work? And really in that space of wanting to really center and value everyone's time, or having some challenges doing that, just the sheer scale of the number of groups we're trying to bring together and move forward in a really impactful way. Also, because of the number of groups, sometimes there was some overlap potentially in purpose or mission, or maybe some lack of clarity about where certain topics could be being addressed, just because we had so many groups. And sometimes we weren't always able to get everybody who needed to be there and be part of a decision to those spaces. Sometimes not everybody can, commit to that monthly meeting, and so led to some inefficiencies in getting the needed input as we had to kind of pivot and figure out how we had to go back and engage with other folks at agencies, bring that feedback back. This structure also doesn't really reflect and have an intentional space for the other places in the community where we're all coming together already. We know we have so many different convenings across our region where you all are coming together, talking about your local needs, and those weren't really reflected in that kind of 16 group council and committee structure. Additionally, as I kind of led off with, the structure didn't necessarily account for the way in which our MDHI staff capacity to support this work would increase over time. And so want to also acknowledge that we have some of the ability to do that work within MDHI staff and kind of look at councils and committees around input, engagement, and feedback. And then two last things. One, we also, I think, acknowledged that there was some intention around how all of that work would really feed up to the MDHI board. And that hadn't really come together in the way that we initially intended. And so sometimes kind of having some of that lack of connectivity between all of those conversations and the conversations at MDHI board. And lastly, I think this structure being really codified in charter wasn't necessarily as flexible as maybe we've learned we need, particularly over these past several years where things have changed so much. And so also looking to how do we have that flexibility to pivot and really get the right feedback at the right time, while recognizing this is an important function of our COC, and we want to have that clarity in our charter for how we do this work. So that's that's current state. This next slide pivots to proposed updates and how we're thinking we could identify opportunities to do this work better, even better going forward. And this is really where we want to dig in and get your feedback when we pivot to small groups. So first, there's kind of 3 buckets here that we'll dig into in a little bit more detail. But first, we're kind of rethinking that board connection piece with the creation of a new committee under the MDHI board called the Continuum Performance Committee. I'll talk a little bit more about who's on that committee currently and what that work is in a second. We also are proposing to simplify the number of committees that we have and really focusing on committee spaces as those with clear ongoing purposes. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those committees in a second. And then we also want to support more flexible options for how we engage with stakeholders, whether that's work groups or attending other convenings that are happening that aren't led by MDHI, and also acknowledging that we need some flexibility in our space to keep this work fresh, keep it relevant in between charter updates. And so with these proposed changes, I do want to frame kind of the intentions of what we're trying to accomplish with these. And I think it'll be really helpful to hear your feedback on whether you think we've achieved these things and whether this is really moving in the right direction when we get into breakouts. But really with simplifying the committee structure, we want to be able to scale the number of committees to those that MDHI staff can manage intentionally and productively toward improving our COC performance. That's really rooted in our desire to respect the value of everyone's time. And it's also not to say that these are the only groups that can ever meet. Part of kind of incorporating those other spaces too is to acknowledge that those other spaces are important, but focusing those COC committees on those that MDHI as a team can manage. Second, we also want to have those standing committees really have a clear lane of ownership. Reduce some of that overlapping scopes of work or confusion about like where's the right place for this conversation to be. And then lastly, and I think really critically, making sure it's easy for you all to know how to plug in and make your voice heard. And then lastly, creating that flexibility so that we do have different options to get the right feedback from the right time in the way that's most efficient for you all. This slide is kind of the org chart version of what I've been talking about. Folks are a little bit more visual. So at the left-hand side, we have the MDHI Board of Directors. The Continuum Performance Committee is a committee of the MDHI board. Jamie, as our executive director, of course, reports up to the MDHI board and then has responsibility for implementation of our COC performance and engagement work. And so that can happen through those COC committees, through standing work groups, and participation and connection with groups not led by MDHI. The rest of this slide shows the specific groups that we're thinking about right now in terms of COC committees and also COC work groups. So on the committee side, those that have that clear ongoing purpose, Community Coordinated Entry Design Team, Young Adult Leadership Council, Coordinating Committee, and then also acknowledging that in a future state, having a lived experience advisory board and a DE&I committee. On the work group side, so those time limited or deliverable specific needs to bring folks together. We have things like permanent housing that's really working on written standards right now. The Notice of Funding Available Opportunity Committee, the NOFO Committee, Point in Time, and Results Academy. And then of those many groups that are meeting, statewide HMIS collaborative, but also so many other spaces that we'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. All right, so these next couple of slides unpack in a little bit more detail, and then pretty quickly here we'll pivot to those breakout groups so that we can all dig in and discuss. So first, on that connection to the board and this Continuum Performance Committee. So this is proposed as a committee of the MDHI Board of Directors alongside our other committees of governance and finance. We do have some precedent with other board committees of bringing in additional perspectives that are really needed outside of MDHI Board of Directors that are really needed to drive that work forward. So one of the questions we're going to have for you all in breakouts is, what perspectives do you think would be really important for this group? Our current members include Tracy Brooks, who is our Vice Chair of Continuum Performance, Jessica Diani, Clayton Gonzalez, and myself. And our purpose is really to inform COC priorities, provide substantive review of major policies and decisions, ensure appropriate engagement, and advance data-informed decision-making through regular review of our system performance data and racial equity data. Just to give you some flavor of what the group plans to work on. So looking at and providing that review of things like COC written standards, charter updates, HMIS policies and procedures, one home policies and prioritization, NOFO work, and then the action planning and aims work that we've talked a lot about already this morning. So really providing that feedback and engagement around those topics. And then we also have a few kind of key infrastructure priorities that we have as well, including a big update to our COC charter to reflect where we land on councils and committees, as well as to really clarify decision making, what needs to come to that full MDHI board versus what can be delegated to the executive director of MDHI. This next piece kind of goes back to that simplifying our COC committee structure. Again, this is really focusing in on those ongoing monthly meetings for those spaces that continue to have a clear ongoing purpose. So things like engagement and feedback around coordinated entry, your community coordinated entry design team, networking and information sharing across stakeholders through coordinating committee, and engaging with youth with lived experience of homelessness through young adult leadership committee. In addition to forthcoming groups around DE&I and a lived experience advisory board. We recognize to make these really work and address some of the challenges that we've had in the past, that we need to have clear purposes for these groups, clear deliverables and reporting structures to make sure we know what we're doing and we have a space for where that work is going so that it's really impactful. And we also identify a need to make sure we have a clear structure for how we're identifying members of these groups so that we do make it easy to plug in. On the flexibility side, again, looking at how do we have an intentional space in our structure for those working groups that maybe don't need to meet year round in perpetuity, but have those time limited or deliverable specific focuses. And also creating space to engage in convenings where you all are already gathering. And so we have a number of spaces where MDHI is already participating, including things like statewide HMIS collaborative. And there's so many places where we're all coming together that could be great opportunities to have conversations about this work, whether that's the Homelessness Leadership Council here in Denver, Homeless Solutions for Boulder County meetings, Aurora at Home, and any number of other sub-regional convenings we know are happening. And then this last slide is really on that flexibility piece through delegation. So we will be looking at this structure and voting on updates to our charter around councils and committees every 5 years as part of that charter process. But in order to create flexibility between those votes, we want to make sure we have space for the executive director of MDHI to have some nimbleness and responsiveness around engagement strategy. And so something we're looking at with charter updates is how do we create that flexibility within our charter as well. And then of course, ongoing accountability and oversight of that process to make sure it's really working, it's important. And so seeing that Continuum Performance Committee, in addition to the MDHI Board of Directors, as a space for that. And with that, these are our questions that we have for you all. I know I have covered a lot of ground in just about 20 minutes here. So that's a lot of information to take in. And we really want to be able to take some time in small groups to talk through with you all, kind of your reactions to this work, what you think would be important, what you think would be helpful. And so these are just a few questions that we identified, including, do you think this would help address the challenges you've had in participating? Is there anything that this doesn't yet address that you think it should? Who should be really, what perspectives would be important for that Continuum Performance Committee? And what information would you need to understand how people from your agency should plug in addition to any other feedback that you may have to strengthen that approach?
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. All right, everyone, we are going to go into breakout rooms. Are you ready? What we're going to do is you are going to, ready? First letter of your first name. Say it again, first letter of your first name, okay? So I'm going to launch this poll. Go ahead and put in your first letter of your first name. Okay, I've never done this before. It says that it's going to create breakout rooms based on this. Are we good? Oh, we're at 70. We're at 80%. All right, who walked away from their computer? Anyone? 88%? 89? There's going to be like 11 people hanging out with me and they don't know why. Okay. Oh, it looks pretty even. This is great. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to end this poll, and then that should automatically transition you to a breakout room. And in there will be a MDHI staff member or members to kind of help facilitate this conversation. We will come back together at 10:50. How does that sound? Here we go. Share results. And let's see. And okay. All right, here we go. Here's what we're going to do, people. You ready? Guys, it didn't work. That's what I get. We are going to add 10 rooms. Can you all see? Breakout room is AB. You got it? You good? Can you all see that? I'm going to open all rooms. And oops. Let me try that again. Options. Allow participants. Here we go. All right. You guys join the room based on your first name.
It's not giving me an option to join the room.
I got you. I'm going to assign you to breakout room 6. There you go.
I need room 3.
Who is that?
This is Gwen. Yeah.
Gwen, I got you. There you go, friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jamie, it's Kathy. I don't have an option either.
Weird. Kathy.
I'm happy to just hang out with you for a while. It's totally fun.
Well, I'm going to be hopping to other rooms.
Okay.
So, yeah. But I would love to hang out with you too. But I'll see you in a second. All right, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I can't join either, Jamie.
I wonder
It's
why,
Tracy.
Tracy. Oh, I wonder, are you I wonder why. That's weird. Tracy, there you go, friend.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome. I got you.
Hi, it's Heather Beck. I think there's a
Hey,
couple
Heather.
others on here. Hello.
Yeah, there are. You're both going to room 4.
Yeah. Oh,
All
here we
right.
go. Thank
There
you.
you go. Yeah.
All right, I think hopefully we are all back. So I will just close this out for this portion of our agenda with a big thank you to you all for taking the time to learn a little bit more about what we've been thinking in this space, for giving your feedback at all of those opportunities earlier, and for taking the time to dig in a little bit more together here today. So in terms of next steps, we are gathering feedback today. Our Continuum Performance Committee will be looking at that feedback as we think through what charter updates we need to reflect a revised approach to our committee and engagement work going forward. And then we do plan to bring this back to our stakeholder meeting later this year in August with those proposed updates for us all to vote on. And so want to just give you that kind of roadmap of what happens after today based on the feedback that you've shared, and looking forward to continuing to engage together as we move forward. And I'll pass it back to Jamie to close us out.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And thanks, everyone. I was able to hop between all the rooms, and it sounded like there's a lot of great conversation. I learned quite a bit just in the little bit I got to see. Okay, next steps. As Jennifer said, we're going to do all that, and you are going to get an email from me. It will have the link to the YouTube recording for today in case you want to rewatch this because you don't have anything else to do, or you'd like to share it with someone else. Feel free. We'll put it on our YouTube page. We'll also have a little survey. If you, again, you are an OG and have been doing this a while, we used to meet in person. Some of you remember the dentist office we met in that one time. It was really crammed. It was weird. So we did this virtually. We'd love to hear how it went. Was it more accessible? Was it better? Do you want to go in person? Just some feedback about today. Mark your calendars every year from here henceforth. August and February is when we plan to have our semi-annual stakeholder meetings. And then last, but certainly not least, thank you for taking 2 hours on a Friday morning to be with us for the meeting today. We appreciate you, all the work that you're doing, your feedback, your attention today, and just everything that you do every day to serve our community. So thank you. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend.
Jamie, I have a question.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Sure,
Who should we email if we have more feedback on the questions? We didn't get through all of ours, or other questions.
You can email them to me.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Or the info. We'll get them. I promise. Okay. Great question.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Carla. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.